The vampire princess rejected every meal for 23 days, her body fading, her fangs refusing to grow. Then a clumsy human waitress spilled her own soup, and for the first time, the dying child smiled. What the vampire king didn't know, the waitress carried the blood of his dead queen, and saving his daughter would bind them forever. The silver spoon clattered against marble, echoing through the silence like a death knell. "Please, your highness," the royal blood sommelier's hands trembled as he held out another crystal goblet. "This one is from the northern valleys, pure, untouched, aged for 70 years. Princess Serafina didn't even glance at it. She sat impossibly small in the massive dining chair, her feet dangling inches above the floor. 10 years old, and already she looked like a ghost, skin translucent as morning mist, crimson eyes now faded to the color of old smoke. King Lucien watched from the shadows of the doorway, his jaw tight enough to crack stone. 23 days. 23 days since his daughter had consumed anything. Her fangs, which should have descended fully by age 9, remained hidden behind pale lips. The vampire physicians called it impossible. The priests called it cursed. He called it agony. "Serafina," his voice cut through the sommelier's desperate pleading. The servants scattered like ravens, bowing low as they fled. Only the king and his daughter remained in the cavernous hall, surrounded by untouched plates and abandoned goblets. She looked up at him with those dying eyes, and his ancient heart, which hadn't truly beaten in 3 centuries, seemed to stutter. "I'm not hungry, Papa. You're dying." I know her voice was barely a whisper, but it all tastes like ash, like nothing, like I'm swallowing darkness. Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt before her chair, taking her cold, thin hands in his. Once, those hands had been warm. Once, when her mother was alive, this child had laughed and played and drained blood from crystal cups without hesitation. But that was before the fever that took his queen. Before Serafina stopped being a normal vampire child. "Then we'll find something that doesn't taste like darkness," he said, forcing conviction into his words. "I'll search every corner of this kingdom. The doors burst open. His head guard, Marcus, strode in with barely concealed panic. "Your Majesty, the High Council demands an audience. They say if the princess doesn't feed by tomorrow's moon, they'll invoke the right of succession." Lucien's eyes flashed crimson. "They dare. They say a vampire who cannot consume blood has no claim to the throne. Not even a child." The words hung in the air like poison. Lucien rose slowly, every inch the predator, but before he could speak, a commotion erupted from the servants' entrance. A girl stumbled through, human, no more than 19, wearing the plain gray uniform of the kitchen staff. A tray crashed from her hands, soup splattering across the pristine floor. She froze when she saw the king, her face draining of what little color it had. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty." She dropped into a clumsy curtsy, nearly slipping in the spilled broth. "I took the wrong door. I thought this was the servants' corridor. I didn't mean." "Remove her." Marcus moved forward, but something stopped him. Serafina had turned her head. For the first time in 23 days, she was looking at something with interest. The smell. Lucien noticed it too, a scent completely foreign to the Crimson Palace. Not blood, not wine. Something. Vegetable. Earthy. Impossibly ordinary. "What is that?" Serafina's voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. The human girl, Mira, her name tag read, looked down at the mess she'd made. Just soup, Your Highness. My dinner. I'm so sorry, I'll clean it." "I want it." Every head turned. Marcus's mouth fell open. Lucien felt the world tilt on its axis. "What?" Myra's eyes went wide with terror. "But, Your Highness, it's just vegetables and broth." It's human food. You can't possibly." "I want it." Serafina was already climbing down from her chair, her movements weak but determined. She walked to where the soup had spilled, knelt, and before anyone could stop her, dipped her finger in the liquid and brought it to her mouth.
No.
Lucien lunged forward, but he was too late. Serafina tasted it. Her eyes closed. And then, impossibly, horrifyingly, miraculously, she smiled. More, she whispered.
Please.
It tastes like. She started to cry. Not from pain. From something else entirely. Mira looked frantically between the king and the princess, then at Marcus, who seemed frozen in shock. I have more in the kitchen. I was making a pot for the night staff. Would you like me to bring? Yes, the word came out of Lucien like gravel.
Now.
The girl ran. The king and his guard stood in stunned silence as Serafina remained kneeling on the floor, tears streaming down her face, whispering the same word over and over. Mother. It tastes like mother. Marcus finally found his voice. Your Majesty, this is impossible. Vampires cannot digest human food. It would be like poison to her. She should be. She's smiling, Marcus. Lucien's voice was hollow with disbelief. Look at her. She's smiling. Mira returned within minutes, carrying a proper bowl filled with steaming broth. Her hands shook as she offered it to Serafina, still kneeling on the floor. It's hot, Your Highness. Please be careful. Serafina took the bowl and drank. Not delicately. Not like a princess. She drank like someone dying of thirst, like someone who'd been drowning and had finally found air. The soup disappeared in seconds. When she lowered the bowl, actual color, was returning to her cheeks. Her eyes were brighter. Her hands had stopped shaking. More? Mira asked softly. Yes, Serafina's voice was clear now.
Please. And.
Thank you. Lucien watched this impossible scene unfold, his mind racing through 3 centuries of vampire lore, through every text and teaching about their kind. Vampires consumed blood. Only blood. Human food was ash to them. Worse than ash, it was nothing. Yet his daughter was eating it. And living. He turned his gaze to the human girl, truly looking at her for the first time. Dark hair pulled back in a simple braid. Warm brown eyes. Calloused hands from kitchen work. Nothing remarkable. Nothing special. Except she'd just done what 23 days of the kingdom's finest blood experts could not. She'd made his daughter eat. What's your name? He asked. Mira, Your Majesty. Mira Ashwood. Where did you learn to make this soup? My grandmother taught me, sire. It's just a village recipe. Nothing special. Everything about it is special. He looked at his daughter, who was holding the empty bowl like it contained treasure. You'll stay in the palace. You'll cook for the princess. Only you. Do you understand? Myra's face paled. Your Majesty, I'm just a waitress. I only started in the kitchens last week. Now you're the princess's personal cook. His voice left no room for argument. You'll have your own quarters, your own supplies. Whatever you need. Name it. I need to know what she likes. She likes what you made. He moved closer, and Mira instinctively stepped back. And Mira? Tell no one what happened here tonight. No one. If word spreads that the vampire princess eats human food, he didn't finish the sentence.
He didn't need to.
Mira swallowed hard and nodded. Marcus cleared his throat. Your Majesty, the council. Can wait. Lucien scooped Serafina into his arms. She weighed nothing. But she was warm now. Warmer than she'd been in days. Come, little one. Let's get you to bed. Will Mira make me breakfast? Serafina asked, her voice sleepy and content. Lucien looked back at the human girl, who stood alone in the massive hall, surrounded by spilled soup and overturned goblets, looking terrified and confused and impossibly young. Yes, he said. She will. As he carried his daughter away, one thought echoed through his mind, the same words Serafina had whispered. It tastes like mother. His dead queen, who'd been human once, before the turning. Who'd cooked in the palace gardens. Who'd made soup from herbs she'd grown herself. The impossibility of it crashed over him like ice water. Behind him, Mira began cleaning the floor with shaking hands, unaware that she'd just stepped into a story far older and far more dangerous than she could possibly imagine. Dawn threatened the horizon when Lucien returned to the dining hall. He'd expected it to be empty. Instead, he found Mira still there, scrubbing the marble floor on her hands and knees. She scrambled upright when she heard his footsteps, her face flushed. "Your Majesty, I was just finishing. It's been 3 hours. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before morning shift." She wrung out her cleaning cloth, avoiding his eyes. I didn't expect to ever serve the royal family directly. I needed time to think about what to cook next." Lucien studied her. In the pale pre-dawn light filtering through the stained glass, she looked even younger than before. Exhausted. Terrified. Yet she'd stayed to clean a mess that any servant would have handled. "You're frightened," he observed. "I'm human in a vampire palace, Your Majesty."
Fear is
practical. Despite everything, the corner of his mouth twitched. Wise answer. He moved to the window, watching the darkness retreat. "Tell me about the soup." "Every ingredient." Mira set down her cloth and recited carefully. "Carrots, potatoes, onions from the kitchen stores. But the herbs, I brought those myself. Thyme, rosemary," and she hesitated. "And silverleaf. It's a wild herb from my village. My grandmother always said it makes the broth taste like home." Her voice softened. "The kitchen master said I couldn't use palace herbs, that human staff must provide our own seasonings, so I've been growing a small patch in the servants' courtyard." Lucien's head snapped toward her. "Silverleaf? You're certain?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Is something wrong?" Everything was wrong. Silverleaf grew only in one region, the eastern valleys where his queen had been born. Where she'd lived before he'd found her, before he'd turned her, before everything had changed. It had been banned from the palace after her death. Too painful a reminder. His voice came out rough. "Where did you get the seeds?" "My grandmother. She said they came from her mother, passed down through generations. It only grows in certain eastern soil," Lucien finished. "In the valley of Thornwick." Myra's eyes widened.
yes.
"How did you know?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Your grandmother, what was her family name?" "Before marriage." "Ashwood, sire." "It's always been Ashwood." She looked confused.
Why? A lie.
It had to be a lie. Ashwood was a common name, meant nothing, proved nothing. Yet the silverleaf, the soup, the way Serafina had responded. The dining hall doors exploded inward. 3 figures in dark crimson robes swept in, the High Council. Lord Silas led them, his ancient face twisted with contempt. "So the rumors are true," his gaze locked on Mira. "The king harbors a human enchantress." Lucien stepped between them. "You forget yourself, Silas." "We forget nothing. The child ate human food."
Impossible.
Unnatural. Lord Silas's lip curled. "This creature has poisoned the princess with witchcraft. The princess is alive. She was dying yesterday. She consumed something no vampire can digest." Another council member, Lady Thorne, pointed a gnarled finger at Mira. "It violates every law of our nature. Either this human is a witch, or the child is no true vampire." The threat hung heavy. Lucien's hands clenched. "Careful. The girl must be tested," Silas declared. "Executed, if necessary. We cannot allow dark magic." "There's no magic." Myra's voice was small but steady. Everyone turned. She stood trembling but upright. "I'm not a witch. I'm just a cook. I don't even know why it worked. I just made what my grandmother taught me." "Silence, cattle." Lady Thorne hissed. "She speaks because I allow it." Lucien's voice dropped to something deadly. "And you will address her with respect, or lose your tongue." The council members exchanged glances. Lord Silas smiled coldly. "The king protects one human girl while his daughter starves. How the court will whisper." "My daughter ate. For the first time in 23 days. And what happens tonight?
Tomorrow?
Will she eat blood again? Or has this human corrupted her completely?" Silas moved closer. The pure bloodlines are watching, Your Majesty. They call for succession. They say your grief has made you weak, that you allow humans to poison the royal line because you cannot bear to lose the child as you lost the queen. Lucien had him by the throat before the last word left his mouth. The old vampire's feet dangled off the ground. Speak of my queen again, Lucien said softly, and you'll learn what true loss means. He dropped Silas, who crumpled gasping to the floor. The other council members stepped back. The girl stays. She cooks for Seraphina. That's not a request. Then let her prove she's no witch, Lady Thorne said quickly. Tonight. Before the full court. Let her prepare food again. Let us test it, observe it. If the princess eats and lives, we'll accept this. Miracle. But if there's any sign of enchantment, there won't be, Mira interrupted, then immediately looked horrified at her own boldness. I mean, I'll do whatever you ask. I want to help Princess Seraphina. That's all. Lord Silas rose slowly, rubbing his throat. Tonight, then, in the grand hall, we'll see what this human truly is. They swept out in a rustle of robes. Silence fell. Mira swayed slightly, and Lucien realized she might collapse. Sit, he pulled out a chair, the same one Seraphina had refused to eat in. Mira sank into it gratefully. They're going to kill me if something goes wrong, she whispered. Nothing will go wrong. You can't know that. What if the soup only worked once? What if she won't eat again? What if? She will. Lucien knelt, bringing himself to eye level with her. You said the soup tastes like home. My daughter hasn't felt home since her mother died. You gave that back to her. Mira looked at him, really looked, and for a moment her fear faded into something else. Understanding, perhaps. Compassion. What is the queen like? She asked softly. The question pierced him.
Kind. Warm.
She made things grow in darkness. He stood abruptly.
Rest.
Tonight, you'll cook before the entire court. And Mira? He paused at the doorway. Thank you. For staying. For cleaning. For caring when you had every reason to run. After he left, Mira sat alone in the massive hall, watching the sun rise fully, something the king could never do. She touched the small pouch of silverleaf seeds in her pocket and wondered why the king had looked at her like he'd seen a ghost. Lucien stood in the center of his private chamber, staring at the portrait he hadn't uncovered in 5 years. Queen Elena. His Elena. Dark hair cascading over bare shoulders. Warm brown eyes that had seen him, truly seen him, not as a monster, but as a man. She'd been human when they met, a healer in a village he'd passed through during a diplomatic mission. She'd bandaged his wounds after an ambush, unafraid, her hands steady and sure. He'd turned her 3 months after their wedding. She'd asked him to. But she'd never fully lost her humanity. She'd kept her garden, her herbs, her simple pleasures, including that damned soup. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Enter. Marcus stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The girl's been given quarters near the princess's wing. I've posted guards for her protection and observation. You don't trust her. I don't trust coincidence, Your Majesty. Marcus moved to the window. A human girl arrives from nowhere, carries herbs from the queen's homeland, cooks the one dish that saves a dying vampire princess? It's too convenient. I had her background checked. And Mira Ashwood, born in Thornwick Valley, orphaned at 15 when her parents died in a fire, raised by her grandmother until last year when the old woman passed. She came to the capital seeking work. Lucien turned from the portrait. Ordinary in every way. Except I sent someone to Thornwick. The Ashwood family has lived there for 6 generations. They were farmers, herbalists, simple folk. He paused. But there's a gap. Myra's great-great-grandmother appeared in the village with an infant daughter and no husband. No one knows where she came from. Marcus's eyes narrowed. How long ago? 73 years. The number hung between them. 73 years ago, Queen Elena had still been human, still had family in Thornwick. A younger sister, if Lucian remembered correctly. Elena had spoken of her rarely, said they'd been estranged. You think the girl is descended from the queen's bloodline? Marcus said carefully. I think it's possible. That would make her distant family. Nothing more. Lucian's voice was firm, but his hands betrayed him, clenching and unclenching. It doesn't matter. What matters is Seraphina is eating. The council will demand proof of the connection tonight. They'll test the food for every known enchantment. Let them. There's no magic. Lucian moved to his desk, where a small wooden box sat. He opened it, revealing a tarnished silver locket. Elena wore this. It was her mother's, passed down through the women of her line. A simple thing, a pressed flower sealed inside. Silverleaf. Marcus understood immediately. You want to see if the girl recognizes it. I want to know if she's lying about who she is. Myra's new quarters were nicer than anywhere she'd ever lived. A real bed with clean sheets. A window overlooking the garden ruins. A writing desk with paper and ink she'd never learned to use properly. She sat on the bed, feeling like an imposter. A soft knock made her jump.
Come in.
Princess Seraphina entered, still in her nightgown, her small hand clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. She looked better, still pale, still thin, but her eyes were brighter. Your Highness. Mira stood quickly. Should you be out of bed? I wanted to see you. Seraphina climbed onto the bed uninvited, settling against the pillows like they'd been friends forever. Papa said you're scared of tonight.
I'm
concerned. Mira sat beside her carefully. What if you don't like what I make? I will. It tastes like Mama. Seraphina hugged her rabbit. She used to make soup in the garden. Before she got sick. Before everything got cold. Myra's throat tightened. I'm sorry you lost her. Do you remember your mama? A little. She sang while she cooked. Silly songs about vegetables. Seraphina giggled, actually giggled. And the sound was so unexpected, so purely childlike, that Mira found herself smiling. Will you teach me? The princess asked suddenly. Teach you what? To cook. Like you do. Like Mama did. Seraphina's gray eyes were earnest. I want to make the soup myself someday, so I can remember her whenever I want. Myra's heart broke and mended in the same moment. I'd be honored, Your Highness. They talked until a stern-faced nursemaid arrived to collect Seraphina. After the princess left, Mira noticed something on the pillow, a small drawing, done in shaky pencil. 3 figures. A tall man with a crown, a small girl, and between them, a woman with long dark hair, holding a spoon. The woman looked like Mira. Midnight brought the king to her door. Walk with me, he commanded, not asked. Mira followed him through silent corridors to a place she'd never seen, the palace's ruined gardens. Moonlight turned everything silver. Broken fountains stood like monuments to neglect. Wild herbs had reclaimed stone pathways. Elena planted this, Lucian said quietly. Every seed, every bulb. She said a palace without green things was just a tomb. Mira knelt by a patch of familiar leaves. Silverleaf. It's growing wild here. She loved it particularly. He watched Myra's fingers trace the leaves with practiced gentleness. Why does my daughter respond to your cooking, Mira Ashwood? I don't know, Your Majesty.
truly.
He pulled out the locket, let it dangle in the moonlight. Do you recognize this? Mira stood slowly, her face draining of color. Where did you get that? Answer the question. Her hand went to her throat, where a leather cord was barely visible beneath her collar. She pulled it out, an identical locket. Tarnished silver, same design, same size. My grandmother gave it to me before she died, Mira whispered. She said it belonged to her grandmother. That it was important. That I should never lose it. Lucian opened his locket. A dried silverleaf flower. Mira opened hers with shaking hands. The same flower, preserved decades apart. What does this mean? She asked. Lucian looked at her, really looked, and saw Elena in the curve of her cheek, the set of her jaw, the way she stood in the garden like she belonged there. It means, he said slowly, that your family, distant, diluted by generations, but family nonetheless. Myra's legs gave out. She sat hard on the stone path. The queen was my ancestor? I believe so. Does that mean am I in danger? More than you were before. Lucian offered his hand, pulled her up. The council will see this as either a miracle or a threat. There's no middle ground in vampire politics. What do you see it as? He looked at the wild garden, the silver leaves catching moonlight, and heard Elena's laugh in the wind. Or perhaps just memory. A second chance, he said. For my daughter. Perhaps for all of us. The palace transformed overnight. Servants whispered in corners. Noble vampires gathered in shadowed alcoves, their conversations dying the moment Mira passed. She felt their eyes like knives against her back. Human witch, someone hissed as she carried herbs through the corridor. Enchantress, another voice agreed. Just like the old queen, seducing our king with peasant magic. Mira kept her head down and walked faster. In the kitchen, it was worse. The head cook, a severe vampire named Madame Narcissa, watched her with undisguised contempt as Mira gathered ingredients for tonight's trial. Think you're special now. Narcissa's voice dripped venom. Cooking for royalty with your human slop. I'm just trying to help the princess, Mira said quietly, selecting carrots from the bin. The princess should drink blood like a proper vampire. Not. Narcissa grabbed Myra's wrist, squeezing until bones ground together. Whatever abomination you're feeding her. Let her go. Marcus stood in the doorway, his hand on his sword. The king's orders, Narcissa. The girl is under royal protection. Narcissa released Mira with a shove. Protection won't last forever. Humans never do. In the council chambers, Lord Silas addressed the gathered nobles. 20 of the oldest bloodlines, their combined ages spanning millennia. They sat in judgment on velvet chairs, faces carved from stone and malice. The child eats human food, Silas announced. Not just eats, thrives on it. This violates every law of our nature. Either Princess Seraphina is not truly vampire, or she has been corrupted by dark magic. Lady Thorne leaned forward. The human girl must be connected to the old queen. Same valley, same herbs, same effect. It's too precise to be coincidence. Perhaps the queen left something behind, suggested Lord Vance, a vampire so old his skin looked like parchment. A spell, a curse. Revenge for being turned against her will. Elena chose the turning. Lucian's voice cut through the chamber. He'd entered unseen, a shadow among shadows. She asked for it, begged for it even. The nobles fell silent. Lucian rarely attended council meetings anymore. Yet she kept her garden, Silas said carefully. Kept her human ways. Some said she regretted the transformation, that she mourned her mortality. My wife's feelings are not on trial here. No, your majesty. But your judgment is, Silas stood. The girl stays, the princess eats human food, and the court sees weakness. Already, 3 noble houses have sent delegations to Lord Draven in the north. They speak of a new king. A pure king. Draven. The name alone made the room colder. Lucian's eldest rival, exiled decades ago for attempting to overthrow the throne. He'd been building power ever since, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Tonight's trial will prove the girl harmless, Lucian said flatly. Or prove her dangerous. Either way, Silas smiled without warmth. The court will have its answer. Seraphina sat in her room, surrounded by drawings. Dozens of them, covering the floor, the bed, pinned to the walls. All the same subject, her mother. Elena in the garden.
Elena smiling. Elena cooking.
Elena with her arms open wide. And in the newest drawings, Mira standing beside her mother, both of them stirring the same pot. Your Highness. A young servant girl peeked in. There's someone here to see you. A visitor from the Northern Territories. Before Seraphina could answer, a figure swept into the room. Tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes like black ice. Lady Morgana, Draven's ambassador. Princess, she bowed, but there was mockery in it.
How?
Well, you look. Seraphina stood, instinctively defensive. My father didn't mention visitors. A surprise, then. I've come to see the miracle child. The one who eats human food. Morgana circled her like a predator studying prey. Tell me, does it make you feel less vampire? Less worthy of the crown your father clings to? Get out. Such spirit. Your mother had spirit too. Until the turning drained it away, Morgana paused by the drawings. All these pictures of a dead woman. And this one, she picked up the drawing of Mira. Is this the human who's replacing her? How convenient. Your father always did have a weakness for human pets. Seraphina's hands clenched. For the first time in weeks, she felt her fangs press against her gums, not descending fully, but present. Angry. Mira is not a pet. She's...
What?
Family? Morgana laughed. Oh, child. Has no one told you? That girl is just a tool. When your father is done with her, when you're well again, she'll disappear like all humans do. Used up and discarded. Liar. Am I? Morgana dropped the drawing. Ask yourself, why does a desperate human girl stay in a palace of monsters? What was she promised? What does she really want? She moved to the door. Tonight at the trial, watch her closely. Watch who she looks at, who she serves, and ask yourself if her kindness is real or just survival. She left like a poison cloud, and Seraphina stood trembling among her drawings, doubt planted like a seed in dark soil. As evening approached, Mira prepared the soup in a small kitchen adjacent to the grand hall. Her hands shook as she chopped vegetables. Beyond the door, she could hear the court gathering, hundreds of vampires, all waiting to judge her. A small hand slipped into hers. Seraphina stood beside her, still in her formal gown from afternoon lessons. But her eyes were different. Guarded. Your Highness? Should you be here? Are you really my family? Seraphina asked bluntly. Or are you just being kind because you have to be? Mira knelt to her level. I'm being kind because you remind me of myself. Lonely. Missing someone who's gone. And maybe, she touched the locket at her throat. Maybe we are family, distant but real. Lady Morgana said you'll leave when I'm better. Lady Morgana doesn't know me. Mira met her eyes. I'll stay as long as you need me. I promise. Seraphina studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I believe you. From the doorway, Lucien watched them, the vampire princess and the human cook, holding hands in the fading light. Behind him, the grand hall filled with nobles hungry for blood and answers. Tonight would prove everything or destroy it all. The trial was about to begin. The grand hall blazed with candlelight, thousands of flames that cast dancing shadows across marble columns and vaulted ceilings. Every noble house had sent representatives. They lined the walls like a gallery of predators, their eyes reflecting crimson in the flickering light. Mira stood at the center, behind a simple wooden table bearing her ingredients. A cauldron hung over an open flame. She'd cooked in her grandmother's cottage, in busy tavern kitchens, but never like this. Never with death as the price of failure. Begin. Lord Silas's voice echoed from the raised dais, where the council sat in judgment. Her hands trembled as she reached for the first carrot. Behind her, she felt the weight of hundreds of vampire gazes. To her left, a table held 5 royal alchemists, their instruments gleaming, scales, vials, detection crystals that would glow if they sensed magic. She forced herself to breathe, to remember her grandmother's kitchen, the way sunlight had streamed through windows, the sound of humming while water boiled. Make it like home, she thought. That's all you know how to do. She began to chop. The hall remained silent except for the rhythmic sound of her knife against wood.
Carrots.
Potatoes. Onions. Each cut precise, each motion practiced. She let muscle memory guide her, tried to forget the audience. When she reached for the silver leaf, whispers erupted. That herb is forbidden, Lady Thorne declared. It was banned after the Queen's death. The king authorized its use, Marcus said from his position beside the throne. For this purpose only. Lucian said nothing. He sat watching Mira with an expression she couldn't read. Seraphina perched on a smaller throne beside him, gripping its arms so tightly her knuckles were white. Mira added the silver leaf to the pot. The scent rose immediately, earthy, nostalgic, impossibly simple. She heard gasps. An older vampire in the front row closed his eyes as if in pain. I know that smell, he whispered. The Queen's garden. By the gods, it's exactly the same. The soup simmered. Mira stirred it slowly, the way her grandmother had taught her. Clockwise 3 times, counterclockwise once. To mix the flavors and bind the love, Gran had said. She'd thought it was just superstition. Now she wasn't sure. 20 minutes passed. The alchemists moved forward, dipping their instruments into the broth. Crystals remained dark. Scales showed perfect balance. One alchemist tasted a drop on a silver spoon and pronounced, "No poison.
No enchantment.
No magic of any kind." "Impossible," Lord Silas snapped. "Test again." They tested 3 more times. The results never changed. Finally, Mira ladled soup into a crystal bowl, the same bowl Seraphina had used before. She walked across the vast hall, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. When she reached the dais, she knelt and offered the bowl upward. "Your Highness." Seraphina looked at her father. He nodded once. The princess took the bowl. The hall held its collective breath. Seraphina drank.
Not tentatively this time.
She drank like it was air, like it was life itself. When she lowered the bowl, her gray eyes had brightened to silver. Color bloomed in her cheeks. And then, a sound. Faint, but unmistakable. Thump, thump, thump. Her heartbeat, audible in the silent hall. Vampires didn't have heartbeats. Their blood moved through ancient magic, not pulse. But Seraphina's heart was beating, slow, irregular, but real. The crowd erupted.
Some in awe.
Others in horror. "Abomination," someone shouted. "Miracle," another countered. Lord Silas rose, face twisted with fury. "This proves nothing but corruption. The child is becoming human." "The child is alive," Lucian stood, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. 23 days she starved. 23 days your experts failed. This human girl succeeded in 2 meals. Call it what you want. I call it salvation. You call it favoritism. Lady Thorne pointed at Mira. You protect this girl because she reminds you of your dead wife. Sentiment clouds your judgment. My judgment, Lucian said quietly, dangerously, is the only one that matters. I am king. Seraphina is my heir. And Mira Ashwood is now officially appointed as caretaker of the princess's hearth. Anyone who challenges this challenges me. The threat was clear. The room fell silent. Then Lord Vance, the ancient vampire, spoke. His voice was like wind through dead trees. I was there when Queen Elena first came to this palace. I saw how she changed things. Changed him. He gestured to Lucian. She brought warmth to cold halls. And when she died, that warmth died with her. Until now. He stood slowly, bones creaking. I vote to accept the human girl. To honor the Queen's legacy through her bloodline. 3 other elders stood in agreement. But Silas remained seated. This is not over. The northern houses will hear of this. And they will come. Let them come, Lucian said. I will not let my daughter starve to satisfy political games. He descended the dais and offered his hand to Mira. She stared at it, shocked. Rise, he said. You've earned your place here. She took his hand. He pulled her up, and for a moment their eyes met. She saw something there, gratitude, yes, but also sorrow. Recognition. The ghost of someone he'd loved and lost. The court watched as the vampire king bowed his head to a human girl.
It was a small bow.
Barely noticeable. But in vampire society, it meant everything. Later, as the hall emptied and servants cleared the space, Serafina ran to Mira and threw her arms around her waist. "You did it," the princess whispered. "We did it," Mira corrected, stroking her hair. From the shadows, Marcus approached Lucian. "The Northern Territories will see this as weakness. Draven will move soon." "I know. Was it worth it? Showing your hand like this?" Lucian watched his daughter embrace the human cook, the girl who carried his dead wife's blood, her recipes, her warmth, and for the first time in 5 years, he saw his child smile without sadness behind it. "Yes," he said. "It was worth everything." But outside the palace walls, riders were already galloping north, carrying news of the king's folly. The rebellion was coming. 3 days of peace. 3 fragile, precious days. Serafina ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Her color deepened from ghostly pale to soft cream. She laughed again, a sound that made servants stop and stare in wonder. She even began taking short walks in the garden ruins, Mira at her side, pointing out which herbs were which. But peace in a vampire court never lasted. Mira was tending the silverleaf patch when she sensed him, a shadow falling across her work. She looked up to find Lucian standing at the garden's edge, silhouetted against the setting sun he could not fully face. "Your Majesty," she started to rise, but he gestured for her to continue. "Elena used to kneel exactly like that," he said quietly. Same posture, same concentration. He moved closer, careful to stay in the lengthening shadows. She said plants could feel intention, that they grew better for people who truly cared. Myra's hands stilled in the soil. "Did you believe her?" "No," a pause. "But I never told her that." She was happy here, and happiness was rare enough. He knelt beside her, the vampire king in his formal robes, kneeling in dirt like a common gardener. Myra's breath caught. "I need to know something," he said. "The truth, Mira. Why did you really come to the capital?" "I told you. My grandmother died. There was nothing left in Thornwick." "Your grandmother's last words. What were they?" Myra's throat tightened. She said to find the Silver Palace. To bring the seeds, she pulled the locket from beneath her collar. "She gave me this and said, 'Return what was lost.' I thought she was delirious from fever." I didn't understand. She knew Lucian's voice was thick with something Mira couldn't name. Elena's sister disappeared 73 years ago, pregnant and unmarried. The family claimed she'd run away in shame. But I always wondered. He reached out slowly, gave Mira time to pull away. When she didn't, he opened her locket. The silver leaf inside was ancient, pressed, and preserved with obvious care. "Elena gave one to her sister before I turned her," Lucian said. "A promise that she'd always be family, even after becoming vampire." Even after everything changed, he opened his own locket, held them side by side. The flowers matched perfectly, 2 halves of a same plant. Myra's eyes burned. "So my great-great-grandmother was the queen's sister?"
"Yes."
"Which makes you—" "Nothing," Mira pulled back, closing her locket with trembling fingers. "It makes me nothing, Your Majesty. Blood diluted across generations until it barely exists. I'm not royal. I'm not special. I'm just. You're the last piece of Elena I have left." The words hung between them like fragile glass. "I see her in you," Lucian continued, his voice breaking. "The way you move, your kindness to Serafina, the way you touch plants like they're precious. And it destroys me because you're so alive and he stopped, composed himself. "I cannot replace her. I know that. But my daughter needs you. Needs what you carry, not just blood, but memory. Legacy." "I'm scared." Myra's admission came out small. "Of failing her. Of failing you. Of what happens when the nobles decide I'm more threat than miracle. That's why I brought you here." Lucian stood, pulled something from his coat. A key, old and ornate. "Elena's private chambers. I sealed them after her death. No one has entered in 5 years. But there are things there, journals, recipes, letters. Things that might help you understand what Serafina needs. What she's becoming. Mira took the key. What is she becoming? I don't know. Half vampire, half human in appetite? It shouldn't be possible. But neither should you being here, cooking the exact meals Elena once made, carrying her bloodline. He looked toward the palace where lights were beginning to glow in windows. Fate or coincidence? I'm too old to believe in either. But I know danger when I sense it. The northern houses are gathering. Marcus reports that Lord Draven has called a conclave. What does that mean?
Va.
Probably his jaw tightened. They'll claim I've violated vampire law by allowing human corruption of the royal line. They'll march under the banner of purity and tradition. And they'll try to take Serafina. Myra's blood ran cold. To kill her? To turn her fully. To purge the human influence from her system. His eyes met hers. They'll torture her with forced blood consumption until she breaks or dies. Standard procedure for corrupted vampires. No, the word came out fierce. I won't let them. You're one human girl. I'm the one who makes her eat. Who makes her smile. Who? Mira stood, dirt on her knees, fury in her eyes. Who loves her like the granddaughter I never had. They'll have to go through me. Something shifted in Lucien's expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. You sound like Elena. She once stood between me and an assassin, armed with nothing but a garden trowel and righteous anger, a ghost of a smile. She was terrifying. Did she win? The assassin ran away.
Despite everything, Mira laughed.
It was a short, half-hysterical sound, but real. A bell tolled in the distance. Marcus appeared at the garden gate, his face grim. Your Majesty. Northern scouts spotted at the border. 300 riders, maybe more. They'll reach the capital in 2 days. Lucien's brief warmth vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Summon the guard. Fortify the palace. And Marcus. He glanced at Mira. Double the protection on the princess and her caretaker. If Draven's coming, he'll try to take them first. Marcus bowed and left. Mira clutched the key. What should I do? Go to Elena's chambers. Learn what you can. Cook for Serafina. Keep her strong. Lucien turned to leave, then paused. And Mira? That promise you made to fight for her? You may have to keep it sooner than you think. He disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving Mira alone in the garden with a key to a dead queen's secrets and 2 days before an army arrived. She looked at the silverleaf, growing wild and resilient in cracked stone. Survive, she thought. That's what we do. We survive. She just hoped it would be enough. The queen's chambers smelled of dust and roses. Mira pushed open the heavy doors, key trembling in her hand. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a room frozen in time. A 4-poster bed with silk curtains. A writing desk covered in dried ink and unsent letters. And everywhere, pressed flowers. Silverleaf, mostly, but also forget-me-nots, lavender, wild thyme. Pinned to walls, pressed in books, woven into dried crowns that hung from the ceiling like abandoned halos. Elena had loved life so much she'd tried to preserve every piece of it. Mira moved to the desk. A leather journal lay open to the last entry, the handwriting elegant but shaky. I grow weaker. The vampire blood sustains my body, but not my soul. Lucien doesn't see it, or won't. He believes love conquered my humanity, but the truth is simpler and sadder. I'm disappearing. The woman who cooked and planted and laughed is fading into something cold and eternal. I fear for Serafina. She carries both natures, my warmth, his darkness. What happens when those forces clash? What if she cannot hold both? If anyone finds this, the answer is in the blood. Not vampire blood alone, but the memory it carries. We are what we consume. We become what we love. The entry ended there. 3 days before Elena died. Mira flipped through earlier pages, recipes, garden layouts, observations about Serafina's development. And then, near the beginning, a pressed flower with a note. For my sister, if she ever forgives me for choosing eternity over family. This silver leaf remembers our mother's garden. May you plant it somewhere safe and teach your daughters the old ways. Love transcends even death. I prove it by living beyond mine. Tears blurred Myra's vision. Her great-great-grandmother had received this, had planted those seeds, had passed them down through generations until they reached Myra's hands. 4 generations, all leading to this moment. A crash echoed from somewhere in the palace, shouting, the clash of steel. Myra ran. She found chaos, guards battling figures in black armor, smoke billowing through corridors, and at the center, Lord Draven himself, silver-haired and ancient, cutting through defenders like they were paper. Where's the abomination? His voice boomed. Where is the half-blood princess? Myra's heart stopped. She sprinted toward Serafina's chambers, but Marcus intercepted her, blood streaming from a cut on his temple. They breached the north wall. 20 got through before we sealed it. He thrust a dagger into her hands.
Hide.
The princess is in the sanctuary with the king. The sanctuary has one entrance. Myra realized with horror. They'll be trapped. It's the most defensible position. An explosion rocked the palace. Part of the ceiling collapsed, separating them. Through the dust, Myra saw Draven's forces advancing toward the sanctuary doors. She ran the opposite direction, toward the kitchens, toward her ingredients, toward the only weapon she had. The sanctuary doors shuddered under repeated blows. Inside, Lucian held Serafina behind him, sword drawn. 10 guards formed a semicircle, all that remained of his protection. Papa, I'm scared, Serafina's voice was small. I know, little one, but I won't let them. The doors exploded inward. Draven strode through with 15 warriors, his smile cold as winter. Dear nephew, still clinging to your human pet project.
Leave. Now.
Or I'll paint these walls with your blood. Such fire. Elena would have admired it. Draven circled slowly. Before she realized what you'd made her into. A vampire who mourned her humanity. A queen who died wishing she'd stayed human. He pointed at Serafina. And now you're doing it to your daughter. Letting her eat human food, develop human weaknesses. You're destroying your own bloodline. I'm saving my daughter. You're making her vulnerable. Draven lunged. The fight was brutal and swift. Lucian was strong, but Draven was older, crueler. Within moments, the king was disarmed, pinned to the ground. Guards lay dead or dying. Draven's warriors seized Serafina. She screamed, thrashing, but they held her fast. The cleansing begins now, Draven announced. Force-fed pure blood until the human corruption burns away. Stop. Everyone turned. Myra stood in the shattered doorway, holding a steaming pot. She looked tiny, terrified, completely out of place among the carnage. Draven laughed. The cook. How delightful. Kill her. Wait. Myra's voice cracked. You want to purge the human from Serafina? You can't. Because she's not corrupted, she's evolved. And I can prove it. Myra, no. Lucian struggled against his captors. She ignored him. Princess Serafina eats human food because she's the first true hybrid. The first vampire who can walk in both worlds. But she needs balance. Vampire blood and human essence. Reject either, and she dies. You're not cleansing her. You're killing her. Draven's eyes narrowed. Prove it. Myra approached on shaking legs. Let her eat one more meal.
Mine.
If she dies, you win, proof that humans corrupt vampires. But if she lives, grows stronger, she met his gaze. Then you're the one denying evolution. Denying the future. Clever. But what makes your meal different from this? Myra pulled a small knife from her belt. Before anyone could stop her, she cut her palm and let 3 drops fall into the soup. Elena's journal said it. We are what we consume. Serafina needs both. Blood and broth. Death and life. That's what I'm offering. Not corruption, completion. The room fell silent. You'd give your blood willingly? Draven seemed genuinely surprised. For her? Yes. Lucien's face twisted with anguish. Mira, if you do this, if vampire blood mixes with yours in her system, it could kill you both. The bond. I know she did, from Elena's journal. A blood bond between human and vampire was permanent, often fatal to the human. But she also knew that Seraphina needed her. Needed the connection to humanity that kept her heart beating. Fascinating. Draven released Seraphina. Feed her. Let's watch this miracle. They pushed the princess forward. She looked at Mira with wide, terrified eyes. It's okay, Mira whispered, kneeling to her level. Trust me. One more time. Seraphina drank. The soup mixed with blood slid down her throat. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Seraphina gasped. Her eyes blazed, not red, not gray, but brilliant silver. Her fangs descended fully for the first time, sharp and perfect. And her heartbeat, that impossible human heartbeat, grew stronger, clearer. She was glowing, actually glowing with soft golden light.
Impossible, Draven bretède.
Seraphina turned to face him, and when she spoke, her voice carried a resonance that made everyone step back. You wanted purity. This is purity. All of me. All of what I am. She raised her hand, and the golden light expanded, forcing Draven's warriors back. The bonds holding Lucien shattered. The king rose, blood on his face, death in his eyes. Run, he said to Draven, while you still can. The battle ended at dawn. Draven's forces retreated when Seraphina's golden light burned through their ranks like holy fire. Those who didn't flee knelt in surrender, overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of what the princess had become. Draven himself escaped, but not before Lucien's blade left a scar across his face that would never heal, a permanent reminder of his failure. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the palace was secure. Broken, bloodied, but standing. Mira collapsed in the sanctuary, her strength finally giving out. The blood bond had taken its toll. She could feel Seraphina's heartbeat in her own chest now, a second pulse that wasn't quite hers. Marcus carried her to the infirmary while Lucien carried his daughter, neither willing to let go of what they'd nearly lost. 3 days later, Mira woke in a room flooded with afternoon light. Real light, warm and golden. She tried to sit up and gasped. Every muscle screamed in protest. Don't move. Seraphina sat beside the bed, looking healthier than Mira had ever seen her. Her skin glowed with life. Her eyes were that striking silver, pupils ringed with the faintest red. The healers said you almost died. The blood bond shouldn't have worked. Humans aren't strong enough to sustain it. Guess I'm stubborn. Myra's voice was rough. Like my great-great-aunt. Seraphina smiled and took her hand. The touch sent a warm pulse through Mira. The bond, connecting them. I can feel you now. Your heartbeat. Your emotions. It's like she struggled for words. Like having a mother again. Myra's eyes burned. I'm not her, sweetheart. I know. You're you. But you're also, Seraphina placed Myra's hand over her heart. Part of me now. The part that remembers what warmth feels like. The door opened. Lucien entered, looking exhausted but relieved. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd probably spent 3 days coordinating repairs and interrogating prisoners. You're awake, he dismissed the guards with a gesture. I wasn't sure you would be. Takes more than a blood bond to kill an Ashwood. Apparently Mira tried to smile. How bad is it? The damage. 43 dead. The north wing collapsed. Half the guard wounded. Lucien sat in the chair across from her bed. But Draven's rebellion is broken. The other noble houses sent formal apologies and pledges of loyalty once they saw what Seraphina became. He looked at his daughter with something like awe. They're calling her the Dawn Princess. The bridge between worlds. I can walk in sunlight now, Seraphina said excitedly. Not for long, it still burns a little, but I managed 10 minutes this morning. And I can eat regular food or drink blood, whichever I want, she paused. Though, I prefer your cooking. Of course you do, Mira laughed, then winced. Note to self. Don't laugh with broken ribs. 3 broken ribs, severe blood loss, and magical exhaustion, Lucian corrected. The healers said it's a miracle you survived the bond. Most humans die within hours. Elena's bloodline, Mira said quietly. Maybe it's stronger than anyone thought. Strong enough to bridge the gap. Lucian's expression softened. She would have been proud. Of both of you, he reached into his coat and pulled out 2 objects, Myra's locket and his own. I had the court jeweler repair them, and I want you to have this. He opened his hand to reveal a 3rd locket, newly made, its silver polished to brightness. Inside was fresh silver leaf from a garden. For Serafina, he explained. So all 3 of you are connected. Past, present, and future. Serafina gasped. Really? You're family now. All of you. Lucian placed the new locket around his daughter's neck, then carefully fastened Myra's repaired one back in place. The council has officially recognized Mira as a member of the royal household. Not as a servant, but as he hesitated, searching for words. As keeper of the queen's legacy. And Serafina's guardian. That's not a real title, Mira protested weakly. It is now. I made it 1 inch a ghost of a smile. I'm the king. I can do that. What about the humans? Mira asked. The ones still kept as servants, as food sources? Lucian's face grew serious. I've issued an edict. No more human feeding within the capital. We'll transition to willing donors and blood banks. It won't be popular with the old families, but he looked at Serafina, glowing with her hybrid strength. Times change. We change with them or die. Will there be more rebellions? Probably. But they'll face something they've never encountered before. He stood, moved to the window where he could watch the garden ruins being restored. A vampire king who remembers that strength isn't purity, it's adaptation. And a princess who proves that the future doesn't have to look like the past. A month passed. The palace healed. Gardens bloomed where ruins had stood. Mira recovered slowly, the bond with Serafina growing stronger each day. She could feel the princess's emotions now, her joy when she successfully fed on blood without rejecting it, her frustration during political lessons, her contentment during their cooking sessions. Because Serafina had insisted on learning to cook herself. 3 turns clockwise, Mira instructed, guiding the princess's hand as she stirred a fresh pot of soup. Then once counter, that's it. Perfect. They stood in Elena's restored garden kitchen, a small building Lucian had commissioned. Glass walls let in maximum sunlight, enough for Mira to work comfortably, little enough that Serafina could visit for hours with only minor discomfort. Tell me again about Gran, Serafina asked, the same question she posed every session. And Mira told her about a small cottage in Thornwick, about herbs drying from ceiling beams, about songs sung while dicing vegetables, about a lineage of women who'd survived, adapted, and ultimately created something new. Lucian watched from the doorway, as he often did. He never interrupted, just observed as his daughter laughed, as the human cook who carried his dead wife's blood taught her the simplest magic, how to turn ingredients into memory. Your Majesty? Marcus appeared beside him. The ambassadors from the Western Kingdoms have arrived. They want to meet the Dawn Princess. Let them wait. Lucian couldn't tear his eyes away from the scene before him. This is more important. Teaching her to cook? Teaching her to be whole, he turned to his guard. Elena tried to be fully vampire and lost herself. Serafina tried to be fully human and nearly died. But this. He gestured to the kitchen where both species worked side by side, mixing blood with broth, death with life. This is balance. This is survival. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The world is changing. The world already changed. We're just catching up. Inside the kitchen, Serafina ladled soup into bowls. One for herself, one for Mira. They sat together at the small wooden table, eating in comfortable silence, as afternoon light painted everything gold. Mira? Serafina asked suddenly, "Will you stay? Even when I'm older and don't need a guardian anymore?" Mira felt the blood bond pulse, the girl's fear of abandonment, her desperate hope. "I'll stay as long as you want me," she promised. "Through every meal, every season. Until we're both too old to remember why we started. That'll take forever."
Good.
"I like forever." Serafina's laugh rang out, bright and clear, fully vampire, fully human, and something entirely new. Years would pass. Rebellions would rise and fall. The palace would see joy and sorrow, peace and conflict. But in the garden kitchen, through every season, two figures remained constant: a vampire princess learning to cook, and a human woman teaching her that the greatest magic wasn't in blood or spells. It was in remembering what it meant to be alive. And in the soil between them, Silverleaf grew wild and resilient, a bridge between worlds, planted by queens and tended by those who understood that survival wasn't about purity. It was about what you were willing to mix together, what you were willing to become.
The end.